Okay, so our next presenter is one of Definiti's own. I'm very pleased to introduce Dave Casperson, who is our regional sales consultant over on the West Coast. Good morning, Dave. How are you this morning?
I'm doing all right. And so, yeah, I know it's us on the West Coast. It's heading to lunchtime, so
Just about, yeah,
I'll
just
try not to
barely
bore
morning.
everyone. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So,
Well, I'll give you the stage so you can talk to us about cash balance plans.
sure. I'm going to share my screen here for a second. I'm not going to kind of go over what I'm sharing. I'm just going to kind of show it, but I'll bring it up. I don't know how many of you know what a cash balance plan is, but just in a really quick nutshell, then I'll kind of get into some bullet points. It's technically a defined benefit plan, but it works a lot like a defined contribution plan. It works a lot like a profit sharing. And the main difference is there's two main differences. One, it has a lot more, it can grow quite a bit more. And two, it has a fixed interest rate like a defined benefit plan. So this is just from one of our brochures, and you can see it's a 2-pager called the Cash Balance Hybrid. This kind of gets into it, but the part I wanted to show, just due to time, was here's the maximum contributions. And because it's a defined benefit plan, your age matters, which is one thing I'm going to get into. But if you go across the bottom here, just to read this, it's just going by ages 40 on up to 68. And then here is how much you can contribute. Now, the bottom line here, this is your 401k. So you can see it takes a jump because here you can do catch-up contributions. But otherwise, everyone maxes kind of the same. And then here is the cash balance. As you can see, from someone who's 40, a little over 100,000, up to almost 350,000. Mainly, as most of you are advisors would know, that's due to the time value of money. They have longer time to invest. In theory, it equates to the same amount. So it can ask me any questions on that, but the main ones, and I reached out to our actuarial team, which we have a pretty good sized actuarial team here, to see what are some of the common questions that advisors or clients have. And one of the first ones was, who does it work best for? What type of company is the best company to bring a cash balance plan in? Remember, this is a plan on top of your 401k, both literally in this graphic and figuratively too. You'd actually have two plans. So one of them is a company that has good profits and they're consistent. Consistency is somewhat important because you're going to look at what they've done in the past and in the future. A good example would be a doctor's office, a dentist's office, something like that, where they have pretty consistent income. For someone like an attorney's office whose income is, one year they can make $5 million, the next year they can make zero. It is possible, but it's much more difficult to design. So you kind of, the consistency is important. Another one is, which you can look at the graphic here, one where the owner is generally the oldest employee or among the oldest employees, and the other employees are young, because if he's contributing and say he wants to go to the maximum and the owner's 60, you can see what he's getting, and here, somewhere down here is probably where his employees are. So it's going to be in their benefit that they're the oldest. And then another one would be, which is the obvious, a company, or particularly a company owner or management, that wants to save more than the 401k allows. This 73,000 down here is just not enough. They want to save more. That is going to be your number one you grab, and then we'll see how it fits. And just before I go on to some of the other ones, we will do, if you get a census to us, your local salesperson, etc., they will do an illustration, and we'll see how well it does work. So we'll let you know if it'll work or not. And another question that they said was, what kind of deductions are they, and what can you expect on the maximums? Well, here they are. Here's the deductions. You do see some people that are younger, but generally this is where it goes. And why it takes a dip at this age, I'd always like to know, but I've never gotten a complete answer. It's not flat, it actually goes down a little bit. But following this up, there is a maximum. And by a maximum, I don't mean per year. There's a maximum to what a cash balance can have in it. And that's roughly $3 million. So if you have somebody saving this much, you can tell they can only have the plan for about 8 years. And that's about it, or they're going to run out. Once that happens, you can close the plan just like a 401k, close it for a year. You can restart one the following year, but you've got to close that. It does hit a cap at $3 million. And then how long do you need to have it? This one can be a sticky situation in some cases. The minimum is 3 years, but really think more 5 years. And the reasoning behind that is 3 years is what the IRS considers that it's long-term. It's got to be perpetual. They consider 3 years to be that. The reason we say 5 years is because I don't want to head deep into the weeds, but you look at the maximums people have, and if it's under 5 years, you kind of have to prorate it a little bit. So although if somebody says we're going to have it 3 years and they can put in 285, it's going to be a little bit prorated less. 5 years is where you can say, okay, there are the maximums. We can go with it. We can run with it. But if somebody says 3 years, we can make it work. So, and that's fine. And we do know, and I kind of expected this question, what if it doesn't last 3 years? Well, there are business decisions in that maybe they went bankrupt, maybe they were bought out, something like that. If it's something unforeseen like that, it's fine. If a company is doing it to know they're going to close it the following year, there's a problem. But if it's a business situation, that's different. The other one with cash balance plans that I didn't hit on, and it's not one bullet point they brought up, is you can see I'm gonna circle it up here. I don't have a pen, but right here, it's got a fixed interest rate. A 401k, of course, you're going to try to hit home runs. On here, here's your fixed rate, just to let you know. And so that's part of the goal, because like I said, it's a defined benefit plan. I know I'm giving you an awful lot of information here. Is there flexibility? What if somebody's putting in this much and then next year, although they're consistent, they're not 100% consistent. They hit a rough time. There is flexibility. It's kind of within reason. You don't want to change it all the time, but you can change it. You can amend it. And what we generally design here at Definiti is a percentage of their income, just to offset that. There are ones that do specific dollar amounts, and I have some that have both. The highly compensated get a specific, the non-highly get a percent. But it's easier if you have a percent, because then you're going to follow that. And now, the one thing I want to say is, what are you following? Well, it's your taxable income. This is important. All of us have had this brought up, and I've had it brought up this week. Pass-through income doesn't count. If you're an S Corp and you've got K1 of 200,000, but you're paying yourself 100,000, it's 100,000. That's your income. And so keep that in mind. Sometimes an employee has to increase their W-2 and take a little less K1 if they want it to work. And so keep that in mind. So that when we do a percentage, it's based on that W-2. It's not based on their full gross income, including K1. And the other, so when you do compensation, and I've had this come up because compensation is a tricky subject in itself. It's always good to have a CPA involved. And one thing I know, and I'm going to speak for the entire class here, by that I mean my coworkers, I do have some cash balance plans that don't have advisors. They're very rare, and we don't recommend them. It's same with our actuaries. They really want advisors involved. They're a little trickier. They've got to get that 5% return, as you see up here, and their income. They're going to figure out what their income works. There's a lot more. It's not a lot of busy work, but you want an advisor to help guide the path. And that's one reason I'm glad you guys are listening to this, because this is a big important part. Very rarely do I have one that doesn't have one, because the advice is needed. Any questions? I know I just spewed a lot of information for you on that. We do have several brochures that get into it a little bit better. And if you guys think of any questions, you reach out to your salesperson, or you can always reach out to me. My email is my first name dot my last name at definiti.com, and you can see my name right here. But are there any questions at all on this? I'm going to stop sharing here so we can see each other.
Well, thank you for that, Dave. I don't see any written questions, but I did.
Okay.
One of the things, because we were talking about the limits that you had there, but the other case study that we share is that this is a great opportunity for somebody to do some significant catch up if they are in that right.
Well, that and also, okay, I thought you were going to go down this path. It's also a huge tax shelter is really the way that's why if you think it's only earning 5%, the tax savings is enormous. And when we do an illustration, our last page of the illustration gives a very generic tax savings. By that, I mean, we don't know what write-offs they have. We don't know things like that. But in this tax bracket, if it were this were all they're having, this is their tax savings. And we also, in it, we show, just like in a 401k, you've got the highly compensated and non-highlies. We show how much those principals as a percentage of the entire cash balance are taking home with them. And I do it like I'm grading an exam. If I were going to grade an exam, obviously you want something in the 90s. You can do it. You're an exceptional person. You can do that. But if it's in the 80s, that's pretty darn good. And there, in some cases, 70s work well. So if you're an owner and you're getting 88% of all the company money, that's a pretty good return. To me, that's you go ahead and do it. And but I have seen somewhere that didn't matter. It was really a benefit for their employees. But and it works tandem with the 401k. So if you do have a 401k, we like to see that adoption agreement because they do work hand in hand to some extent. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, it's one of those situations where best case scenario is to reach out to a Definiti sales consultant and let them walk you through that process. Like you said, Dave, you guys can generate an illustration and show them what's possible.
That's right.
That's right. Awesome. Thank you, Dave. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Nice to spotlight some Definiti know-how today. So thanks for your time today.